So Bill, we have successfully, at least from the people that we've worked with so far on Federal Workforce Fallout, everyone's gotten a job. Everyone's starting their new job off in the new year, which has been great news. It still seems like folks are really wrestling with this
Yeah.
resume for some reason of
Yeah.
not being able to write it in a way that is going to help them get it in front of a person that can make a decision about whether or not to bring them on or bring them
Yep.
on for an interview or give them the
Right.
job. I
Right.
think what you've laid out specifically is really a really clear formula in terms of what it should look like. Can you reiterate that for us again? What is
Yeah.
the formula for success when it comes to your resume?
All right. So and I'll give it to you from the perspective of a recruiter, Larry, of what I want to see when I see a resume. So it's basically answering five questions. What are you is the very first question. Here's where people struggle. They don't spend the time to clearly identify and articulate what they are great at. In this economy, you've got to claim some area of expertise. And what people have a tendency of doing is painting a very broad picture because they're afraid they'll miss out on some opportunities. When in reality, the way you hear about opportunities is by being very precise, very specific about what you are and how you're making a difference. And that is where people struggle. And and the folks who have gotten that right, when they start reaching out to people, not online, and that's a whole nother mess we can talk about,
Mhm.
but when they start reaching out to people directly, they're getting responses. And it's because they're they're so clear and concise that when they reach out to a busy hiring manager, a busy executive, it's real easy for that person to understand the value that person brings and how they can solve the problems they have. So that's the first point. The second thing you've got to be clear about, and people do this, but where you worked. Okay.
Mhm.
Part of that is being able to articulate in one or two sentences something about that organization that will both inform and impress. Everybody may think they understand Capital One, or they may think they understand the State Department, but people are shocked often to hear things that they weren't aware of. The size of the organization, the number of people, the number of departments, their mission. I mean, something that would inform the reader about what that organization is all about. Because as a recruiter, I'm looking at that to see how it compares to the job I'm trying to fill. Okay. Second, your job title. I mean, what was your job? I mean, people can pretty much get that. Um, where they mess up after that is not making a distinction between what they were responsible for and what they accomplished. So when I talk about what you were responsible for, it's like the overall accountabilities. Um, and it's two or three sentences. And literally, Larry, I'm pretty anal with folks when I work with them. Responsible for. Again, I'm the reader. I'm the recruiter. I've got an order on one hand that says, I guarantee you, it says, the person in this job is responsible for the following. I want to see that. I don't want to have to go look for that. And then the next piece is accomplishments, where people continue to struggle is not making the distinction between a responsibility and an accomplishment. An
Mm.
accomplishment speaks to some kind of outcome, some kind of result, and it's formatted in a way that it's outcome action. So what was the outcome or result? And it was by what you did. So where people struggle there is they'll take information from a job description and they'll put it on their resume, but it doesn't speak to any kind of outcome. And what I see a lot of times with the folks from the federal government, um, process stuff. I coordinated, I supported, um, I wrote something, and they don't think it through to the further in terms of, well, what was the outcome of doing that? We did that for a reason.
Mhm.
Well, what was that reason? So that's where people continue to struggle with putting these together. I'll tell you, Larry, the other thing that's going on right now that's really, I think, misleading is all the buzz out there about AI, which no doubt is a, you know, groundbreaking technology, and we're in a whole nother industrial revolution because of it.
Mhm.
But what you see people doing is seeing a job posted online, they're taking their resume and they're asking Claude or ChatGPT or some other artificial intelligence to modify their resume to fit that job description. So when you have a job posted and there's 100, 200, 300, 500 people posting against that job, and they're all doing that now, these resumes all look the same. You're not
Mm.
you're not differentiating yourself from everybody else who's applying. So while the technology can be real helpful in helping you maybe reword an accomplishment, reword your responsibility, the problem with handing this off to artificial intelligence is everything begins to look the same. So as a recruiter or hiring manager, I'm looking at 10 resumes and they all look the same now because we're using the same technology to match to a job description. So, it's a combination of the resume, but the other thing that's going on, Larry, and this is where in this economy, you've got to find a different way to do it. And you and I have talked before on different shows about the value and the importance of relationships and
Yeah.
connection. You know, I, I don't want to go so far as to say it's a waste of time to apply online, but when you see something you like, and I'll give you a good example. Um, when you see something you like, your first course of action has got to be who do I know that might be there? Who do I know that maybe was there and may know somebody who's there? It's a question of how can I get a recommendation? How can I get a warm referral? Going in cold is and being one of 300 or 400 or 500 people applying for a job
Mhm.
is really, really challenging. And when you talk to people who are doing that, they are so frustrated and believe the system is completely broken. And to a large degree, it is because it, we're not in a place where there's so many jobs that you can get by with applying online. You've got to find a way to get in front of people. I'll give you an example. I was working with a guy last week, and we spent a lot of time on his professional summary on the top of his resume, which really becomes your presentation to a hiring manager. Well, he found a job that he was interested in. Together, we found that person's email,
Mm.
and we wrote an email, not a cover letter,
Mhm.
but he
Mhm.
wrote an email to that hiring manager, and it was very simple. And I've got his. I actually pulled it up for our meeting. I mean, his resume. I am a cybersecurity information technology executive, 20 years of experience, globally diverse, Fortune 200 companies, aviation, manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, responsible for multiple locations, teams ranging from 12 to 350 in size, balancing, which is a key word in the cybersecurity space, balancing cybersecurity risk while leveraging technology to transform organizations supporting revenue growth. And it started out with I am a cyber that was his email, Larry. That was his cover
Mhm.
letter. The
Mhm.
second sentence, the second paragraph, I am very interested in your cyber CISO role at Joe's Rag Shop, and given my experience, would look forward to an introductory conversation. Sincerely, John. And then what he did, he copied and pasted his resume, Larry, in the body of that email. Okay.
Mm. Mhm.
So he sent it to that executive, that hiring
Mhm.
manager, did not hear back from the hiring manager. He got an email the next day from somebody in recruiting that said, we'd be very interested in setting up a call.
Wow.
And that's, I mean, I can't say that's going to work each and every time,
Right.
but it's a way to differentiate yourself. It's a way, the whole objective is not, years ago, the objective was somebody's going to call me back.
Hmm.
That's no longer the objective. The objective now is you've got to get seen. You've got to do whatever you can to be seen by that hiring manager. And it means going around the system a little bit.
Hmm.
But otherwise, you're doing what everybody else out there is doing, which in many, many cases, it just doesn't work any longer.
Mm. The tools of the past, unfortunately, aren't working in this new age.
No, and the thing is, what again I said up front, people really struggle with getting clear about what they are,
Yeah.
and um, it just you've got to take the time, and I'm annoying about it. I mean, I will push people. I say, you got, Larry, you got one sentence,
Hmm.
and we'll work together. We can kind of collaborate a little bit. You got one sentence to tell me what you are and what the value, the greatness you bring to the marketplace. I mean, you and I both have worked with one individual who in the HR space. Even with that person, we were able to come up with a statement that were she to apply to the right job and go to that hiring manager directly,
Hmm.
it would get attention because it was so specific. And again, this fear of being too specific that I'll miss out on lots of opportunities. The irony is the more general you are,
Hmm.
the more you're going to miss out on opportunities. And in this economy, and I don't know if it's changed, honestly, Larry. I think it's always been like this, but I think it's more valuable now, more important now. It's all about expertise.
Yeah.
You've got to lay claim to something you are great at because as the hiring manager on the other end,
Hmm.
I've got a problem that needs to be solved. There's work not getting done because I have this open position. If you put something in front of me that immediately speaks to my pain, I'm going to say to somebody like this guy's experience was, call this guy. Because
Mm.
recruiters are not going to wade through three or 400 resumes. They're going to go through that applicant tracking system. I mean, remember, these recruiters might have 20 open jobs, 30 open jobs. They don't have the time to go through all the stuff that hits their inbox or hits their
Hmm.
applicant tracking system. They're going to pick out the top three or four or five, and they're going to go to the hiring manager. You may have a great background. It may match perfectly, but you may not be high enough on that list to get passed forward. So I
Mm.
mean, it's a combination of stuff. It's your resume and how you present yourself. It's how you go after jobs in this economy that you have to be really thoughtful about. And it is about connections. It is about relationships and getting creative about how you can get that warm introduction to somebody um, who has that role to fill.
Yeah. Um, Bill, if I'm just starting out, a lot of this can be overwhelming. It
Yeah.
does seem as if that I probably should, before I decide to go and intact my resume and get it together, I probably have to ask myself some really like a fundamental question. Who am I
Yeah.
and what sort of problem am I capable of filling and meeting for an organization, resolving for an organization that would want to would compel them to bring me on? It seems like that basic question's got to be answered by you
Oh
first.
yeah. Oh yeah, Larry. I mean, and you just kind of nail it with what's the problem. Thinking. I mean, you're not going to write your professional summary necessarily in that way, but it is a question of what's the problem I can solve for an organization. How can I make a difference for that organization?
Hmm.
There's this whole methodology ikigai that's out there that asks you, and I talk about it in the book, but it asks you several pointed questions.
Hmm.
In fact, that's the first chapter in the book. which is to your point, who am I?
Mm,
And what do I want to do? Because we've all done a variety of different things. So
mhm.
it's getting that clarity around how you can really make a difference for an organization. Um, and that's also got to map with what I want to do.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's got to be something that I'll be excited about, that I can get paid for.
Hmm.
So all those pieces have got to line up. But it's, yeah, absolutely. It starts there. That's the first step.
Yeah. It's been exciting to see so many people that we've worked with thus far get opportunities after you've really, really taken their resume from this point to another point. And it's been remarkable to see the change. And I think for those of us that may have some trauma from elementary school and middle school of seeing our red markings on our resume. It's all done with love and compassion.
Yeah, I tell you, man, some of the resumes, I'll give you another example, and this is this week. Somebody sent me a resume, and it was a functional versus a chronological resume. So functional being more about skills and less about the, the job. So on one hand, on this resume, on the left hand gutter, it listed like 6 or 7 job titles, organizations, job titles, years, and then in the middle, the bulk of the resume, it was all this stuff under major headings like communications, strategy, leadership, marketing. Um, it is the the absolute worst to put in front of a recruiter,
Mm,
because there's no context for the accomplishments. I have no idea when they occurred. Um, Plus, they're written more like responsibilities than accomplishments. It had a picture on it.
mm,
Um, it just, it was, I couldn't redline it, which
mhm.
I love to do, because it was just, if somebody wants to go in that direction, um, God bless them, go for it.
Mhm.
But in my mind, it is such a mistake. Again, I'm the guy reading the resumes. I'm not a resume designer, Larry. I mean, I'm not a resume coach.
Mhm.
I'm the guy who is reading the resumes when people apply for jobs. And I'm telling you, and I'm telling them exactly what it is I want to see, because I don't have a lot of time, and I'm going to go through them quickly. And if you can answer those 4 or 5, questions up front for me, you have a better chance of, getting passed on for another review. But it's not a design exercise. Somebody like myself, I don't care if you put bubbles and color and all sorts of design. It's that kind of stuff is it's more of a distraction, frankly, because then I
Mhm.
gotta kind of read it and figure out what's here. And at a certain point, I just don't. So,
Wow.
um, yeah.
Okay. Well, Bill, we'll leave it there. I think what we'll do.